Welcome back to Table Talk and Tumbleweeds, our Lenten edition, which this year we did a reflection on Lord of the Rings, which we called Lent of the Rings. And basically it's over, Lent is over, we have completed the book, but what we wanted to do was a brief reflection and sort of wrap this up. And so I think that what we decided we wanted to talk about is just a little bit of, what we learned.
What we learned, what are we going to carry away from this?
What surprised us, whatever, right. So I'm going to make you go first because you thought that we might come up with the same thing, but I have two things written down, so whatever you say, I can say something else.
You can say the other one. So what really comes to me, and this is not a surprise, and it shouldn't be, but it's how overwhelming and how continuous through the entire story it is, and how continuous it is through the entire Gospels, how continuous it is through the entirety of Scripture, how evil cannot be destroyed by one person. Mm-hmm. Evil is not a thing that we can fight against one-on-one. Not only is it the best thing to fight against evil is fellowship, it's the only thing.
Yeah.
It is the only thing that can contend with evil is fellowship and choosing to do things together. And more it is choosing to do things together again and again and again. And so on Monday, at the last of our book study ones.
Oh yeah, I missed it, sorry.
One of the things that we somehow popped into my brain as we were discussing this is how one of the things that the ring does, this symbol of evil, this manufactured evil in the world, what it does is it takes your good intentions and it twists them into bad actions and evil actions. And so this is over again what we've talked about, how Boromir wants to do good with it and the ring twists him into doing evil things, right? And over we get this idea. And we've argued that Sauron does not have an opposite. Sauron is the Fnigdiga, he's the emptiness. But the ring, I will say that there is an opposite to that, and that is the fellowship. Because, specifically, being in fellowship, being with other people, contending with other people, understanding who we are in reference to other people, untwists those bad desires and turns them into good actions. And this is why I mentioned Lobelia Sackville Baggins last time.
Okay.
Because when she saw the need for fellowship, when she became part of this community after her husband died, she chooses fellowship. And that choosing of fellowship untwists her desires to say, this is my house, this is my stuff, this is mine, me.
Me, mine,
and untwist it to be my shire, my people, my community. And she does what's right.
Okay. So community of discernment is important for overcoming sort of like the will,
You might as well say it.
I'm not going to say the will turned in itself. I just did. But a community of discernment is really the best way to overcome the errors of good intention.
Exactly so.
Because I used to, when I talked about 20th century stuff, and there was a lot of crappy stuff that happened in the 20th century, and so far the 21st century has given it a run for its money. I suspect every century is like that. But one of the things I used to talk to my students about, one of the things to try to understand is it's really easy to say that evil things are done by evil people. And this is one thing. This is here comes Hannah Arendt, right? The thing about evil is it's not done by evil people. It's done by good people who are either bent, something goes wrong, or they lie to themselves about what they're doing. And so one of the things that we would do in my class on the 20th century is reading literature. What is the story that people tell themselves, right? That makes their actions defensible, right? Because most people, 90% of the people, 95%, maybe even more, maybe a little bit less, who knows, 94.3% of the people do not get up in the morning and think, how can I do evil?
No.
Right? What they do is they tell themselves that what they do is good for a better purpose. And that's what the ring taps into.
Exactly so.
Right? And that's what we need. That's why you can't be surrounded by yes men. Sauron is surrounded by yes men.
Saruman wanted yes men so bad that he built his own.
Right?
And without that continuous, constant interplay and connection and vulnerability and all of those things within a community, you end up getting lost. And so community is not just the best thing for combating the evils of the world, whatever they may be. It's the only thing that can. And without community, we are incomplete people.
Yes, without community, we actually end up becoming part of the problem. And I think, this is, and I think that was, and it was not one of the things I had written down, just in case. It was not one of the things I had written down.
So I thought that was so obvious, that this is obviously what it's about. It's all about fellowship, and it's even what we put on our little buttons. Choose fellowship.
Choose fellowship. I should have noticed that. What I have, and I'm going to pick up my piece of paper now. So the two things I discovered sort of simultaneously. The one thing that most surprised me is that this is a boy book. And in retrospect, it's one of those things, it's sort of like, yeah, okay, I can't believe I've seen it. It's like, oh, that was pretty obvious. But
the fact that you love it.
yes, and I'm not a boy, and I know other women who love and read the book, and so therefore it's not a boy book.
The trouble is that we've claimed it as one. And
Yeah, but even in our congregations and the people showing up and the people that I'm talking to is I would say men men, period. But just how many of the guys in our congregation, I mean, some of them are like, oh yeah, I read the book once a year.
Yeah.
I'm like, how can you read it once a year? It's gotta be like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You get to the end and you gotta go back and start all over. This is huge.
Yeah.
How can you, but people like, yes, I read it regularly, and it's just, and every time they read it, and the poetry, do you read the poetry too? Stop that. So it's really surprising to me that it's such a boy book.
Okay.
But also, the fact that it is such a boy book, but I think so much, and especially rewatching the movies. So maybe this is a parenthetical, surprising thing. How bad the movies are when you're reading them next to the books.
Yeah.
And I understand you can't. A movie is a different art form. You have to let it go. But the first movie does get into some of the stuff, and I'm watching it and I'm going, this is ponderous.
Yes.
And I don't feel that way when I'm reading in the book. Maybe because of the text and the stuff that's going on, and there's all these people walking through misty dark, and I love the battle scenes. Don't get me wrong. The Uruk-hai is exciting, and I love the battle scenes. You're there, and it's very well done, and it's beautifully filmed. But they miss out. If the only thing you knew about the Lord of the Rings was the book, I can understand people saying, "Well, why would you read that for Lent?"
If the only thing people knew about was the movie.
It's a movie, yeah. So the book, and so here comes to the thing that really, I think this is such a boy narrative, right? And
we have struggled to find.
We have struggled, and Eowyn is in there, and she's awesome, and Tolkien does a surprisingly good job with her. But the rest of the time, this is a boy book. Boys are attracted to battle,
Yeah.
and yet, I think that the hero in this is never violence. The hero in this is never war. The most powerful moments in this entire story are moments of mercy, moments of forgiveness,
Absolutely.
moments of vulnerability, and moments of sacrifice. I could sort of build on that, right? That the hero fails.
Mm-hmm.
The woman and the little guy kill the big bad. That this is again and again and again Tolkien, who is familiar with all of these narratives, flips the script. That what caused, the forgiveness of Gollum, right? Over and over again. Mercy, right? Bilbo, Frodo, Gandalf, the elves, even Sam at the end, right? The mercy towards Gollum. And we talked about this just in the previous video, the scouring of the Shire. Frodo, first when they meet Saruman on the road,
Yes.
and Frodo is like, whatever, you're irrelevant, let him go. And he goes and he creates havoc for them. And then they're sitting there, they're kicking him out of the Shire.
And they still kick him out to go do what he wants instead of actually imprisoning him, instead of killing him.
And Wormtongue is there.
Wormtongue does kill him.
And that's the thing, right? So sparing Gollum changes the outcome of history. Sparing Gollum does that. But Frodo's refusal to kill Saruman ends up in Saruman immediately being killed, right? So, but
well, and that's
Frodo doesn't do it, and that's the victory. Frodo doesn't do it. Calamity may come to you, right? But it's not going to come to you by my hand, right?
And that is one of those things which is the community grouping, the community organizing, the community everything, is that those who are on that choice of evil, Wormtongue and Saruman and all those, are in it for me and me alone, and once Wormtongue's had enough, he kills it.
He kills him, yeah.
And that's how evil separates itself, isolates itself, and goodness always wants to come together. Goodness always wants fellowship, always wants community.
So I would say that's, but even when Frodo doesn't kill him, that is the victory, right? That Frodo's refusal to take vengeance on Saruman, not once, but twice, right? And really one of those hardest moments in looking at this text is when they forgive Saruman, and almost immediately he gets killed, right? So you have this contrast between the repeated mercy and forgiveness towards Gollum, which ends up is the thing that makes the world safe, as opposed to this. But I think that the point, what's important in there, is this is how Frodo shows us who he is, right? Much like Aragorn demonstrates what it means to be a servant, what it means to be a king, not by vanquishing the enemy with arms, but by sneaking into the city and healing the people in the houses of healing. And so this is that very Tolkien moment, right? Of this is, you think you know, What defeats evil? Let me show you. It's the little guys. It's the people. It's
Yes.
the community. And it might be, and I think we have to touch on the Undying Lands before we leave, and because I do have a question about that. So I think it's because Frodo does that. Eventually his reward, not really. Well, it's kind of a reward. I mean, he is unable to heal the wounds of the journey in the Shire,
And so it's time for him to leave.
He's given permission to come to the Undying Lands. Bilbo, who was also a ring bearer, gets to go. There's, he might have been just to go to keep Bilbo company, Frodo company, but they go off to the Undying Lands with Gandalf and the rest.
Well, Gandalf is also a ring bearer, not necessarily one of the
This
bow
is true,
ring,
right,
but he's
yeah.
one of the other rings, which is why he gets to also go.
Yeah, so the
So
ring
it's a
bearer isn't
reward.
just the ring; it's the rings.
Right, and so it is a reward in some fashion.
So let me ask you a question. Here's my question: if Gollum had survived, would Gollum have been allowed to come to the Undying Lands? His healing would have taken a lot longer.
Yeah.
But didn't, and I think perhaps yes, and I'm remembering way back in the first book when the elves had him,
Yeah.
but they treated him with mercy, and that was part of how he was able to get away.
My instinct is to say maybe. My hope is to say yes.
Yeah.
My hope is that Gollum would be allowed into the Undying Lands because, again, the ring is the thing that twists him. So the ring is the thing that changes him from Smeagol into Gollum. And part of the journey he spends with Frodo, with Sam, is relearning Smeagol. Right?
Yeah.
He gets called by name, which we've already said multiple times, right? He gets called by name and gets reminded, remember who you were, remember what you can be again.
Speaking,
And
yeah.
that restoration back into Smeagol, I think he deserved it. I think that if he had lived through it, he would deserve it. I don't know what the text would say. I don't know what Tolkien would say, but I think he should.
I think he should. I would agree with you. And okay, one more question. Did Gimli get to go? There's some disagreement about this. I like to think of him and Galadriel.
See, the thing is, it's probably not him and Galadriel. It's probably him and Legolas. As such great buddies who go and remember after the end.
Are you a Legolas Gimli shipper?
No.
Legally?
No, because and this is one of those things where one of the important things is as a boy book, this wants to talk about actual, real, deep, vulnerable friendship between men that is not sexualized.
Yes.
That is not this thing that becomes us. Oh, I guess they're gay. No, men should be allowed to be friends in that way, and
I think that's a really important point because I was joking with someone who made the point about the and every once in a while people will make it, and I'm like, no, right? Because this is a book in a time when men could be friends,
exactly.
Right? And they could be close friends, they could be buddies, they could do everything together, and there wasn't anything wrong with it, right? And I think and this maybe this is a whole other thing, but yeah, I mean the idea that men can hang out and do stuff that doesn't necessarily involve killing people.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
and
yes,
fact,
it does sometimes.
What Gimli and Legolas do at the end is rebuild.
They rebuild.
Right?
They
want to rebuild Minas Tirith. They want to rebuild the forests. They want to rebuild Moria. They want to rebuild.
And they do, and that's what they do. That is their buddy story, is traveling around Middle Earth, planting and building and creating and doing stuff and having adventures together. I want to read. Okay, so right after Stephen Colbert finishes his little thing, which with Sam's daughter, right? Who Sam leaves there with all of his stuff when he goes off to the Dying Lands, and so she's going to reminisce about the first 5 books, and hopefully not Tom Bombadil, but I'm afraid so. But
lots of come up.
Yeah, so when that's done, I think Legolas and Gimli, the broship.
That's not the worst idea.
Not the worst idea, maybe second worst.
But then once again, we're back onto that track where what matters is what they do together.
Yeah.
And I really do think that for everything we've been talking about, and the entire series for the last 8 weeks we've been in here, the thing that really, really shows up over and over to me again is how fellowship is what brings us to goodness. And when we are isolated and alone, that's when we start to make choices that are for ourselves, for our own purposes, and and have no discernment to them.
Okay, so I think that's an ending. We're glad if you made it all the way through, congratulations. Contact us, we've got a button for you.
I've got spares, I'll give anyone who wants one a button.
And yeah.
Thank you.
Good night and good news.